A lot of jazz players will spend so much time and energy on doing a transcription that they don't get what they want out of it. And this really just comes from not being clear on why you're doing the transcription in the first place. And the way I see it, there's really only 3 reasons that somebody would do a transcription. And if we know which one we're doing it for, it can save us a lot of time and energy when we're doing the transcription and then also practicing it. And stick around till the number 3, because you're going to see that that one really makes it so that you can cut down a lot of the time and actually get to work on the things you want to work on. So the first reason that you would be doing a transcription is for history, for historical accuracy. This is the kind of transcription where you want to get every single note perfect. You want to get it note for note. You want to transcribe every little subtlety. And you're really going to spend most of your time transcribing, doing the actual writing down of the notes, because you want to get it so perfect. And the main question you want to be asking yourself when you're doing one of these historical transcriptions is, did I get every note perfectly? That's really the main thing that you want to be focusing on. Now, the reason we would do a historical transcription like this is, say, like we're going to present it at a conference or something, or we're going to make a YouTube video about it, or we're going to do a study or write a paper about it or something like that. And here's the thing, most jazz musicians will never do that. Most jazz musicians, we're doing transcriptions so that we can play them, right? And so if you're trying to transcribe everything note for note, it's going to take up so much of your time, and you don't get to that part where you're actually playing and developing yourself, right? And sadly, most people, when they're transcribing, they actually treat it like they're doing a history project. They're so obsessed with, I gotta get every single note right, is it this or that, that they never get to the part of actually working on it and playing it and getting it into their own vocabulary so that they can use it. So I don't necessarily recommend doing that kind of transcription unless you're doing some sort of presentation or something like that. The second reason that we would do a transcription is to use it as an etude, okay? So this reason for transcribing is to develop a specific skill. So you want to work on a certain kind of vocabulary. There's a certain, maybe there's like a rudiment that Greg Hutchinson uses in his solos that you're not very good at, and you want to refine that. So you're going to learn his solo as a way to refine that rudiment. Or you really love Charlie Parker's time feel, and so you're going to memorize one of his solos so that you can play it along with the recording and really get deep inside of that time feel. Or you love the way that Philly Joe Jones uses rudiments and drags, and you're like, how does he do that? So you're learning one of his solos so that you can get better at using drags, okay? This is the kind of solo where the main question you should be asking yourself is, what skill am I trying to develop? What am I practicing here? How do I play this better, right? Because the intention of learning that transcription is it's as an etude. It's to develop a skill. So really, you're going to spend your time transcribing it, but where you're going to spend the most time is actually practicing. Because the idea is that you're going to be playing things that you can't play already, right? That's the whole point of it. That's why you're treating it as an etude, right? So there's going to be a lot of slowing down, getting this bar correct. Okay, what is that sticking? Or how do I finger that on the saxophone? Or okay, the time feel, it's really fast. I gotta practice that over and over again. And then you're going to be putting chunks together. Okay, can I transition from that to that, right? That's where you're going to be spending most of your time. Now, this is an important part of being a jazz musician. Everybody should do this. I would say it should be about 10 to 30% of your transcription practice should be this kind of deep etude, learning one solo for months and getting it really, really perfect. And the reason for that is this is how you develop. This is how you become deep. This is how you develop subtleties. If you're playing along with a Barry Harris solo and you hear how he articulates this and you play it over and over again until you get just the right articulation, or you're playing along to a Greg Hutchinson solo and you're really trying to get his sound on the drums, his touch, right? Get those diddles really even so that it sounds crisp like him, right? You need to go deep, right? And that's an important part of being a jazz musician, is you have to develop all this subtlety, this depth, and that only happens by going into something and really touching it and feeling it and just getting in there and getting every little detail correctly. So this is really, really important. Now the thing to be careful of is sometimes people want to spend their whole practice time just doing these etude solos. And then what happens is they're like, oh, I can play this whole Charlie Parker solo, but when I go up on the bandstand, I can't use them as my own. I can't improvise with it. It doesn't come out of me naturally. It's like it's blocked behind bars, right? And the reason is because this kind of practice, it leaves out a very important skill in being an improviser, which is improvising. It leaves out the ability to take something you know and create something out of it. That's really what being an improviser is, right? We're not just making it up completely off the spot. We're taking things that we already know and creating something out of it. It's kind of like vocabulary. I know a bunch of words in the English language, but I can put them together in all these different creative, unique ways. And when you're practicing just like an etude, you're not necessarily practicing that skill. So that's why it shouldn't be your whole practice. There's another way to practice transcriptions that's going to help you develop that skill, okay? And by the way, doing transcriptions is just one part of being a complete jazz musician. There's so many things you're going to have to do, like learning tunes. You're going to have to develop coordination and technique on your instrument. You're going to have to get good listening habits. You're going to have to learn how to play with people, get your phrasing dialed in, and how to interact, all of this stuff. So I do work with people more closely on this. I mentor some students more closely. If that's something that you want to work on so you can be a complete jazz musician, there should be some links in the description where you can reach out to me and maybe we can work closer together. Okay, so this third way to work on transcriptions, this is really the magical one, okay? Because the third way is working on a transcription for creativity. It's for creativity, okay? This means that you're going into a transcription looking for inspiration, looking for ideas that you like, looking for things that, oh, I want to play more of that stuff, right? I want to, I want to have more drag kind of vocabulary, or, oh, I really love the way, they arpeggiate that shape. It's like 1, 2, 5, 4. Oh, that's really interesting. You're looking for inspiration that you can then make your own, okay? Now, where you're going to spend your time, most of your time in this, is not necessarily on the transcribing and trying to get every note perfect, because here's the deal. When you're looking for inspiration, you can transcribe smaller phrases, because you're just looking for a little nugget, something that you can be inspired by. So you can transcribe maybe a bar at a time, and your transcription doesn't even have to be perfect, because it's not for a history assignment, it's for creativity. You're listening to it and you're like, this is what I like about this. You transcribe it. So you don't even have to transcribe it completely perfectly. You can get inspiration just from the parts that you like, right? So you're not going to spend all your time transcribing. And then you will have to practice the ideas that you get, but instead of practicing a whole 64-bar solo and trying to get the transitions right and working it up to tempo, instead it's just one little lick, right? It's just one little phrase that you're transcribing. And you can get that comfortable pretty quickly. So you're not even going to spend most of your time like really deeply practicing the transcription. What you're going to really spend your time on is being creative. And the question you're going to ask yourself is, how can I use this idea in other ways? What do I like about this phrase? What ideas does it remind me of? How can I combine it with other ideas that I like and make more ideas so that I can improvise for an hour just using this one idea, right? This is more like being an artist. This is more creative. This is more why most of us want to play jazz music in the first place, is the actual act of improvising, okay? And it's kind of like a painter. He takes inspiration from here, takes inspiration from there, combines it into something new that's his own style or her own style, right? So I'll give you a little example of this. I think that would be helpful. So, for example, a phrase that one of my students was asking about the other day. Okay, here's one. It goes like this. It goes, right? It's like this Billy Higgins phrase. And there's a couple elements. They were like, can you show me how you would take that phrase and, create your own ideas out of it? Okay, so I got this phrase. It's just one bar. And I'm like, I like that phrase. What do I like about it? Well, I like that there's like the stick shot, right? And then I like this kind of like, there's some accents with a drag that lead into it, right? Pretty cool. Now, what I'm curious about is, can I make some more ideas out of that, right? So the first thing I would do is I would kind of treat it like a lump of clay. Like, I'm just gonna like move this around and just feel it. I don't even know what it's gonna be yet, but I'm just gonna kind of play with it for a little while. And I would do something that's not even necessarily super in time, but I'm just auditioning different ideas, just kind of messing around with it, right? So I might do something like this. Ooh, that's kind of interesting. And it's important in this stage. Like, I don't even know how that's gonna play out rhythmically, right? But I'm just like, oh, that's interesting, right? So, that's kind of cool, right? This is becoming my own idea. I don't think I've ever heard anybody play that, right? But I'm like, it's inspired by Billy Higgins. It tastes like Billy Higgins, but it's me, it's Jameson, right? So. Okay, good. So I can make more ideas out of it. And then I would try to maybe play in time for a little while and improvise with those ideas that I made up. So. You'll see that it's kind of messy sometimes. Sometimes the ideas don't come out perfectly, but that's okay, because I'm just being creative here. There's gonna be things that really latch on and that I like and I want to keep forever, and I'll refine those some more later. But at the beginning, I'm just taking that one idea and just molding it around like a lump of clay, right? And then I would take, now I'm gonna put it in a context. I'm gonna put it in maybe some trading fours. Right? I'm just messing with that idea. Everything that comes out isn't perfect. That's part of being a creative person. It's just like being willing to like audition some things and try some things and kind of fall flat on your face. Like, that's totally okay if some ideas come out and they're not cool. Now, let's say now I've worked out a couple ideas with that. Now what I'm going to try to do is put it in the context of my other vocabulary, right? Things that I play usually. It's kind of like when you learn a new word in English and then you need to use it in context so that you remember it. Because if it's just this abstract word that you never use and you don't know how to relate it to the rest of your vocabulary, it's never going to come out smooth, okay? So something like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Even when I got at the end there, I was like, how am I going to finish that, right? But that's part of this process, is I'm just taking that little phrase, and it's a new idea for me that I'm going to play around with. And eventually, it's going to be something that I can improvise with very confidently. That's going to just come out of me. So I really think that this kind of transcription, transcribing for creativity, should be 70%, 90% of the transcriptions that we do, because that's ultimately the reason that we're doing it. Is because we want to be able to get up on that stage and improvise. We want to have ideas come out that sound like jazz, that sound like the players that we like, but that they have our own spin on it. So if we make our practice process reflect that act of taking things that you know and creating something new out of it, then ultimately it's just going to become smoother and smoother so that when you do go up on stage, it's going to come right out of you. So next time you start a transcription, before you get too deep into it, ask yourself, what's my intent here? Am I transcribing for history? Am I transcribing for an etude, or am I transcribing for creativity? If you found this video interesting, there's probably another video recommended here that you're gonna like. Check it out. I'll see you next time.